Greetings, fellow men. Servus Männer. Red Pill Germany again. Today I want to talk about a topic that has been discussed in the past, of course, but it keeps popping up, and a lot of younger, maybe unexperienced MGTOW men keep bringing up this issue. What I want to talk about is foreign women. The concept of dating a foreign woman, or the idea to date a foreign woman, is usually coming up when the young male perceives or realizes that he doesn't have high enough sexual market value in order to compete with other men for young attractive women. It can also be that these men think that all Western women actually are morally rotten and spoiled, and maybe in distant foreign lands they would find some magical creature with family values who would be a loving wife and lover. Women seek, of course, safety, status, and resources in a man, whereas men look for youth, beauty, health, and fertility in a young woman. That means, of course, that a woman starts her journey on the sexual marketplace with a relatively high value, and she loses in time, whereas a man, being poor and young, normally has relatively low value, but he can work on his skills and accumulate resources to increase his sexual market value. We are also very familiar, of course, with the 20-80 rule that says that 80% of the women compete for 20% of the top alpha males that are the most handsome, tallest, richest men, of course, and 80% of the men are perceived as being substandard by a majority of the women. So now this apparently viable strategy presents itself to many young men, and they think, haha, I can just become an English teacher in Korea or Japan or in Cambodia, and then I will have high sexual market value, and all those Asian chicks, for example, will love to go out with me, and I can sleep around first and then maybe find a good wife. Now I personally can say, yeah, it is true. It does in fact work. This is exactly how it is. I didn't go there as an English teacher. I mean, I worked at a university in Japan for a couple of years. And I have to say, yes, my sexual market value relatively increased by quite a bit. And this phenomenon is, of course, very well known when especially white or European people come to Japan. So it does in fact work to cheat the sexual market value system by just changing the marketplace. Go to a place where you are in higher demand, and you will find willing partners there. This has many reasons, of course. One of the reasons, I think, is that when we see the face of a different race that we did not grow up with, we don't really see attractive or unattractive features. We just see an exotic face. And the same goes in the other direction, of course. When a Japanese person who was growing up among only Japanese people all of a sudden sees a Western face, she cannot tell whether or that white person is considered to be very handsome or not. All she sees is then an exotic looking white male who looks different than the Japanese guys she knows, and that kind of excites her. And I also have to say that in the case of Japan, not every Japanese woman fantasizes about going out with a gaijin, with a foreigner. In fact, this is a very small minority among Japanese ladies who would ever consider going out with a white dude. However, there is much less supply than there is demand. Although these women are a minority among Japanese women, there are just not that many foreigners in Japan, unless you're at Roppongi in Tokyo. So if you're in another city where there are less foreigners, there are just not as many white people to saturate the market, so to speak. So you will be quite okay, and you will find in certain bars a lot of Japanese women who will gladly date you and go out with you, and it's actually very easy to hit on them and to take them out. So if you have a bachelor's degree and you're an English native speaker, you can just go there and be a jet teacher for 2 years or something and have a little fun. There is nothing wrong with that. However, if you have more serious plans than just going there for a bit of fun and some change of air, the question becomes much more complicated, because most of these Japanese girls, they are really not that high quality. Of course, they look and act very feminine, but this is about where it ends. I mean, they sleep around a lot and they see their boyfriends, and especially their Western boyfriends, more as a novelty item or as a status symbol that they parade around. So they are really not long-term girlfriend material, and they're definitely not wife material. And I've seen a lot of beta males from the West, like the little chubby, nerdy student, or who was there as an English teacher then later maybe, and they had these slim, pretty looking Japanese girls in their mini skirts with their long black hair, and they thought they are so cool, but in fact those women were sleeping around with 3 guys actually, and they were just really airheaded and uneducated. So you really have to know what you're getting into when you go to East Asia and try to get an exotic, submissive, feminine girlfriend. You really have to study the culture, and you have to be able to tell who is a quality person in that culture and who is not. Because if you have not done your research, you will be really fooled by the impressions that you have. You will not be able to identify properly who is who and what is what. And a lot of Western guys who go there fall victim to that. And many of them are just really dumb, and they're just so overwhelmed by their apparent relative popularity that they have gotten then after coming to Japan, and all the attention they get by the ladies, that their ego builds up pretty fast, and they just think that they're the greatest guys, but they're actually not. They're just in a very different market where they fill a supply gap in a very special niche market. And it doesn't mean that they all of a sudden are alpha males or that they are great guys or a catch. It just means that they are exotic, that they're some novelty item to some Japanese girls who sport them like a Louis Vuitton bag or their new shoes. So as far as dating Japanese chicks in Japan goes, I would say if you just want to have fun for a certain amount of time, let's say you go there for 2 years and just get your dick wet, and that is perfectly fine. You can do that, no problem. If you're not really obviously ugly or obese, or there's something obviously wrong with you, if you're just an average guy, you will be very successful if you play your cards right and if you observe the culture. If you have, however, some more serious plan in mind and plan for marriage, then you are opening a whole different can of worms here. And so there are basically 2 options. Finding a job in Japan, a permanent job that is, which is really not that hard once you're married, because you have a spousal visa, so you can stay in Japan. And when you have your visa already, the language schools will gladly hire you. Whereas when they have to sponsor a visa for you, they are more reluctant to do that because it involves a lot of paperwork. So if you have really no other marketable skill and you don't speak fluent Japanese, and I think the same would go for Korea or China or any other country, I think you cannot really expect to have a great job there just speaking English. So if you're okay with just staying a language teacher, then you can actually go there. Some people open their own language school and they marry Japanese wives. However, I mean, having a steady income and a wife is not the only thing you need to consider. you need to consider that the Japanese culture is very different from ours. Marriage is really more considered like a business model there. And of course, a lot of men will argue that in the West it is no different. However, in the West, it is more hidden and it's masked by euphemisms and flowery ideas of romantic love, when in fact it is about money, of course, and everyone knows that. So in that sense, it's actually refreshing to see the Japanese be so very open about that and say, oh yeah, I mean, you bring home the money and I'm a homemaker. That's our agreement here. And I'm just using Japan as an example here. I'm sure the same thing would go for other countries that are more traditional still. I mean, just watch that Stefan Molyneux video about that guy who bought his prostitute wife's family what was it? A water buffalo or a cow? I think it was an old cow, and he's saving on a water buffalo. Yeah, I mean, this is what you're getting into basically. The other option is that you bring your wife home to the West with you, and then I can only refer to Eddie Murphy, and I think it was his program called Raw, where he talked about Umfufu, the butt-naked zebra bitch, and how she started talking to American women once he got her from Africa, and he tried to lock her up in his house so that she doesn't interact with American culture. However, the American women, they just snuck into his room and told her that she can in fact have half of Eddie's shit, and she doesn't have to put up with that shit anymore. She can get half. And this is exactly how it goes. I mean, bring those women home to the West and they will be Western women in no time. The female hive, the female collective is very efficient at locking together and updating their programs and having it all run the latest versions. I mean, they will just flip almost overnight. They will become spoiled Western women with an attitude in zero time. I mean, in the end, she says, Eddie, I wanna talk. Eddie, I don't like the way you treat me. Eddie, what have you done for me lately? Alright guys, so in my next video I will tell you about a really awesome blog with over 1,000 comments under it. It's just like a treasure box for red pill men and people who want to find out about marriage and women in general. And I went through this whole thing within a week and I learned so much from that. And it is about Westerners in Japan being married to Japanese wives. It is quite funny and also a little sad, and one can learn a great deal from that. So, thanks for tuning in again, and have a good day. Servus Männer!